Hey guys, how are you guys doing today? If you're new around here, my name is Ron, and today I'm going to be repotting my Philodendron Birkin. So I actually purchased this plant from a nursery in Hawaii when I was visiting for my sister's wedding. And I will show you what it originally looked like. It was beautiful. It had so much white variegation on it, and it lost all of those white leaves and it went dormant for a little while, but it's thriving again because now the variegation is coming back. So I am quite thrilled about that. I'm debating whether or not I should actually propagate it, because where the stem lost the majority of the leaves, and this was during a period of time when it continued to lose leaves and it wasn't really getting all of this bright light that my plant room is getting now. So you'll see in the part of the stem where it kind of lost volume, and that's because it wasn't thriving. So it didn't have enough nutrients, it didn't have enough sunlight or humidity to grow like in mass, if that makes sense. So the stem kind of does that. There's like a pinch point. So I'm wondering if I should chop it over there. If I do so, that means I'll have to put the top part in water, let that root, and then keep the mother plant in soil somehow. I don't know if I should keep it in its original pot or put it into a new pot of soil. So we will see. Let me show you the plant, and then we can further examine what's going on, and then hopefully we'll make some kind of decision. Okay, so the pot is kind of heavy because I just watered it a couple of days ago, but here it is. It's still in its original 8-inch nursery pot with a whole bunch of pumice in there, black pumice, which might be lava rocks actually from Hawaii. But what I disliked about this medium is that it's so chunky. I don't really know what's actually inside of the pot. If it's soil, if the pumice is just sitting at the top layer, because when I water the plant, after a couple of days, the pumice at the top will look really dry. So I wouldn't know how moist the soil would be if there actually is soil in here. And in addition to that, I can't really use a moisture meter because if I poked through all of those rocks, it might damage the tip of this moisture meter. And I don't want to do that either. Using the finger method is probably the best bet, but the plant kind of sits tucked away in the corner over there, so it's not the easiest to access. Whatever we do today, I think I'm going to actually just repot it into my normal chunky mix of soil. Right here is where you can see that pinch point I was talking about. So this is where, oh, there's a fungus gnat. Okay, that's another issue. But yeah, right here, the stem is at its thickest, and then it lost leaves at this pinch point here. Didn't get a lot of sunlight, didn't get a lot of humidity, and so the stem just kind of stopped thriving. And then as soon as I added more grow lights into this room, that's when the stem started to push out more leaves and started to become fuller and thicker again, pushing out beautiful green leaves. But as of a couple of weeks ago, it pushed out more variegation, as you can see, and this leaf right here. It's not as much variegation as the original beautiful variegated leaves in the beginning, but there is a new growth, if I can show you right there, and it looks pretty white, doesn't it? So I'm excited about that. So hopefully when I do transplant it into soil or propagate it into water, it'll continue to grow into a beautiful white leaf, because that's what this plant is known for, right? The striking white variegated stripes on the leaves in contrast with the dark green. I think it looks really beautiful when they're white and green like this leaf right here, because a fully green leaf like that is kind of boring. But regardless, this is still a pretty plant. So I also want to kind of trim up all of these aerial roots right here. They're just kind of floating in the air, not really doing anything. Some of them are actually like crisped up and dry. So I'm gonna trim some of that off, but I think I'm actually gonna take a propagation. And the reason is because right here at the pinch point is a perfect spot to take the cutting, and everything above that looks really, really nice in terms of like the volume, the fullness of the plant itself. And everything below that just kind of looks very not as pretty, because that is a big chunk of bare stem. So I'm probably gonna just cut that piece off as well. So yeah, let's just go in for the closer look and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome to the closer look. So I think I'm going to take the cutting first and then let the top cutting kind of just hang out and dry a little bit at the incision point. And then take off this big chunk of leafless stem and toss that. I don't know, maybe I'll throw that into my propagation box and then we'll see what happens in a future video. And then repot the mother plant into, I have a white nursery pot right here. It's smaller. I might have to use another pot, but we'll see what the root system actually looks like. But here I have my shears already sterilized. And if you can see, this is where the pinch point is that I was talking about earlier. But below that, we have like about an inch of aerial roots. So I'm gonna take the cutting below those aerial roots because those roots will kind of kickstart the rooting process, right? So I'm just gonna clean up some of the old dried up sheathing a little bit. Okay, so I might have to, I don't know if I can get it in one slice, but we'll see. Am I nervous? Yes. Do I care? No. There we go. We did it. So this is the top cutting. It's still very full, but as with all of my propagations, the bottom leaves here will most likely turn yellow and fall off within a couple of weeks. Maybe 1, 2, I would say 3 of these leaves will fall off within the month. So that's just something you have to expect. But here's the incision point. That's what it looks like. And then these are some of the aerial roots I was talking about that will help kick off the rooting process. So I'm just gonna let that dry for a little bit while we work with the mother plant. The incision point on this one, the wound looks the same, obviously. But as we can see, there's just this very bare stump right here that looks kind of funny. It's like this thumb just sticking out, right? So I'm just gonna try to cut that off. With Philodendron Birkin, it's kind of hard to see where the leaf nodes are. So it's not easy to determine where new growth points will happen. Because if you have a thriving Birkin, the internodal spacing is pretty much non-existent, as you can see. This is where the brown spots, I don't know if you can tell, but you'll see horizontal lines on this stump right here, okay? Each horizontal line represents where a leaf was. So those are nodes, and within each node, there should be a slight bump where there will be a leaf node where there is a potential for a new leaf to sprout out of. But I'm gonna be taking all of that off because there's likely additional nodes below that where I'm gonna hope new leaves will sprout from. So, let me just give you a good angle here. And I'm just gonna cut it as close as I can to the base of the plant. Okay, there's the chunk. A big chunk. See, you can't really tell where the leaf nodes are. I believe this one right here is a leaf node, but it looks really old. It's hard to tell because this plant grows in all directions. So your leaf nodes will end up like all around the stem. But anyway, that's the big chunk. There's a couple of long aerial roots here. I don't know. I'll throw this into my propagation box and then see what happens after a few weeks. It'll probably do something. Either way, it's gonna have to callus over. But yeah, there it is. I'm just gonna try to carefully cut off some of these dried up, really dried up aerial roots, just to make it look a little bit more pretty. Okay, now let's remove her from the pot. Okay, so there is a good amount of root rot, but at the same time, there is a lot of healthy new roots at the bottom. And this is what I was actually kind of expecting, because like I said earlier, it is hard to tell whether or not the pot or the soil is dry. But yeah, it's like pumice all throughout. There's like pumice, sand, charcoal, and not a lot of soil. So I'm just gonna try to clean this off, and then we'll trim off all of those dead roots as best as we can. See, this is one example. This is not healthy roots right here. It's black. Actually, I take that back. On this side, there's a lot of brown mushy roots. If I had to guess, I'm probably gonna have to reduce it down to 25% of its original root system volume, which is kind of sad, but since I did take a cutting, it's not gonna have a lot of plant to support, so that's good. It's not gonna need that much roots. You see all of this. This is root rot. Not good. Okay, so this is interesting because I don't remember this, but it looks like there was another plant in here which eventually died off. So that explains like a whole lot of these dead roots in the pot, because there is a dead stump right here and it seems to have roots going all the way into the soil, and that's probably why only this side has more healthy roots, whereas this side is mostly like brown and mushy. So I'm happy that I actually took the cutting, because the cutting is what's going to survive actually, and hopefully this survives too if I can give it a really good rinse. Okay, so this is the best that I could do. I really did remove like about 75% of the root system. But that's because I found 2 leftover dead stumps where I think previously there was a plant. So, I mean, I still think this is a good amount of roots to support this many leaves. So now I'm just going to take this to the sink and quickly rinse it off, use some hydrogen peroxide, and then I'll be right back. Okay, she is back. I gently rinsed the roots under the sink, and then I let it sit in a mixture of hydrogen peroxide and water. And so now this is what we're left with. A lot of the dark colored, almost black looking roots ended up rinsing out to be more like a brown color, which tells me they're not rotting, because on some of them there are white roots growing out. So this is what we're left with. So now I'm just gonna, I still see some leftover rot I'm just gonna pinch off, but for the most part it is pretty good. So let me just put this one aside and then we'll prepare our pot. Okay, so I have my nursery pot, and then I'm gonna use some pre-mixed soil that I have on hand, but it's the same soil mix that I use for my Philodendron Birkin. So if you wanna see what is exactly in here, you can check out that video. But what I did was I ended up adding a little bit more potting soil because I didn't think it was enough. So I think this is enough. But to prepare my pot, I'm gonna add some sphagnum moss to the bottom to kind of act as a filter so that soil will not spill out as much from the bottom, because as you can see, there's a whole bunch of holes in the bottom. Okay, just like that. I think that's fine. I don't want too much because it's gonna retain too much water. And then in an attempt to keep things nice and clean, I'm just gonna put it onto this tray. Put some soil in there first and pot her up. Okay, so there we have it, nicely potted. So I have some water here, and to the water I'm going to be adding a few drops of Dr. Q's plant tonic. So this is going to help with reducing transplant shock, and then providing some extra vitamins and nutrients, and then thoroughly watering her. So there's a lot of water coming out from the bottom through the holes, and that's because this is a very chunky and airy soil mix. Okay, we've got some chunky cocoa fiber in there, cocoa husk, sphagnum moss, charcoal, and pumice, and I think there's actually a mixture of pumice and perlite in here. So Mama Birkin is done. Now, let's see how much the top cutting has dried up. Okay, so it did callus over a little bit. It turned brown, so it's still in the process. Okay, so I'm gonna use this glass jar right here. I think previously I had some Syngonium elbow cuttings in here, which I ended up not cleaning this jar afterwards for some reason. So I'm gonna use the same water that I used for the mother plant. But before I put it in water, I'm gonna remove all of these dried up sheaths, because that will eventually rot and turn slimy and then just develop unwanted bacteria. So I'm gonna clean it up as much as we can here. Okay, that should be good. So this should sit in there very nicely. And then I'm only gonna add water, enough water to cover the roots, something like that. It's kind of hard to see, but you don't want it to cover more than necessary. And there we go. Now with the stump, if we didn't forget about it, I'm gonna throw this into my propagation box. Okay, but I'm kind of embarrassed to show you because there's a lot of leftover, overdue cuttings in here. Okay, you can laugh all you want, but as you can see, there's a whole bunch of string of turtles in here, which is gonna be a pain to kind of dig out the roots out. So that's kind of why I've been putting this off. But there's also a baby Syngonium albo, which is not very albo looking. Oh yeah, I actually recently pruned my Rhaphidophora hai, so there's several strands in there. And then there's also my Hoya obovata in here, and I think that's it. There's probably not much room, but I'm so lazy. I should probably transplant all of these really soon, but for now, I'm just gonna plop this in right there, and we'll see what happens. All right, well, that's about it for this video, guys. So I placed the mama plant back into its original location right there, because I feel like it has a good amount of bright light in that spot. And then I put the cutting right here along with these other plants on top of the shelf next to the south-facing window. So I'm gonna keep an eye on this one, and I know I usually say that I'm gonna keep up with the water changes, but I never do. This one I'm gonna try to, okay? I promise, because like we saw earlier, the new growth in there is coming out with a lot of variegation, and it's really pretty, so I don't wanna lose that. But yeah, if you wanna keep up with some updates, then definitely keep an eye out for update videos on this plant, or you can follow me on Instagram at suchplants. But yeah, now I need to go cook some dinner because as you can see, it's getting dark. It's about 5 p.m. in the beginning of January, which, by the way, Happy New Year. But yeah, hopefully they continue to thrive. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't yet already, plant scribe. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.